All right, then. So yeah, it's really fantastic to be here on the last day and on the last session to talk about the projects. I will try to be brief because I know quite a few of you are taking trains and taking planes to go back home, and there is a disruption with trains in the UK and in Germany, some will have to leave a little bit earlier. So the objective of this presentation is just to work with you and understand with you what the CBC projects should be. So I'll talk a little bit about our research agenda, our research timeline, the project scope, what we think should be included in the projects, and how projects should be managed, project proposals, and then I'll share with you a survey that you can answer very quickly. It shouldn't take more than 5 minutes, maybe even less. So the research agenda of the CBC has been since 2018, beginning of 2019, has been about looking at the construction industry in the most holistic way possible. So we are considering not only construction, but the built environment in general. And we look into themes like legal, financing, adoption of the technologies, culture and change of the industry, design and construction. And this includes, of course, health and safety issues. And also, as they discuss nowadays, health, well-being, safety, and security issues, not just health and safety. So the scope of that service in the construction industry is growing. Operations and building services, and within this we have digital twins. It's a very key thing, and building management systems that are becoming automated, more automated and more autonomous. Energy and sustainability, smart cities and social welfare. So what can smart cities bring as a service to cities, what it can bring to welfare and the human condition. And policy and compliance, this is to do with the work we develop with the Parliament, presenting evidence and trying to push the technology adoption. So we've been writing, so we have a value proposition that you can check online. We have our first white paper on finance and procurement in construction. This was completed in 2020. We have a BIM white paper that has been completed last year with Professor David Greenwood, who contributed greatly for this white paper. And we had some publications, external publications, but they've been directed or they've been led by CBC members, CBC steering committee members and technical committee members. For example, Blockchain for Construction was led by Theodore Dunas. Construction 4.0, I wrote a chapter, but I think quite a few. Gavin, I think you wrote a chapter for that? No, you're writing for the one next year, that's right. But Professor Borja de Soto wrote a chapter on cybersecurity on that book. So it's an interesting thing to see that the platform, the CBC platform, is bringing people together who can think together about the adoption of the technology in the construction industry. Our next white paper is on IoT and smart environments, therefore the theme this year. So I'm developing this with Professor Alan Penn, Professor Noha Salib, James Thompson, yeah, and Niall Rock. So you all accepted to contribute to the paper. So I'm editing the paper, and everybody is contributing as they can. But we do have a good progress. So I had a couple of meetings with Professor Alan Penn, Professor Salib, and Neil Thompson, and we're progressing. So we have a table of contents, we know where we're going, and we're developing summaries for each chapter. And I believe that by November, in the CBC conference, we'll have a first draft in good enough shape to drive a focus group and get some feedback to finalize the paper this year. And this is eventually presented in the British Parliament, but we also is starting to strengthen our connections with the European Parliament, and we plan to present this also at the European Parliament level as evidence. After that, I believe, I don't know, but I believe our next white paper will be about AI, blockchain, and the built environment. I think this would be almost like an easy guess. I think we should be doing that, but it could also be about other things. For example, going in greater depth about digital twins. So we need to have a discussion with the CBC members and see the best way forward. So the development of the knowledge in the CBC is really this, is writing the white papers. From the white papers, we derive a yellow paper, a technical paper, and then from that, we have a green paper discussing the sustainability implications of the technology and the high-level strategy, and we try to establish a project, an open source project. So our first white paper was on financial models for the construction industry. So we look into our next project, and we hope that will be related to the first white paper, but this is not set in stone. It could be something else if we so see fit. If we think there is something else that is more interesting or more disruptive, then we would develop that. So one thing that we've been observing is that when we talk about the construction industry, we talk about design tech, things like parametric modeling and BIM, CAD and BIM, and the transition between CAD and BIM, and now how BIM is enabling digital twins. And this is about geometry specification and simulation. And on the top of that, we start to discuss management tech, and this is also very much BIM, is like this new wave of capabilities in BIM. It's managing the project through the 3D model. And this is interesting because it connects really well with some systems engineering approaches like MBSE, model-based systems engineering. And that's something that, if possible, we should align to. And then we talk about fintech, blockchain and tokenized economies, law tech, smart contracts. And then we start to have a very blurred line there. It could be other, it's not necessarily just law tech and fintech, they come together. And we have GovTech, which is, I believe, the ideal final destination, is how to have governments implementing projects, and it goes cross-sectionally in all the different domains: law tech, fintech, management tech, and design tech. So the idea is to have this traceable system of systems for the built environment, to have better governance in BIM, digital twins, reality meshes, and new models for networks of value. So here we see a picture of a scan of a castle with lots of detail. I think this has been done with a drone, so you have like computer vision creating the 3D model, and this can be used for BIM processes and eventually the digital twin, and this could be in the blockchain. Right, so when we talk about BIM capabilities, I've been trying to organize the different BIM dimensions, and usually we talk about 2D models, 3D models. This is generally very well accepted as BIM dimensions, but then we have the fourth dimension, scheduling, cost control, and facilities management as the sixth dimension. But when you look at the many links of people offering BIM solutions, they start to have a very fuzzy line on what the next dimension is. Most people say the sixth dimension is sustainability, some say it's facilities management. Then there is a seventh dimension about sustainability or facilities management. Then we have an eighth dimension of health and safety. Some people elect this eighth dimension as sensors and analytics. And then we have a ninth dimension of lean construction, or some people call this industrialization. And we can even talk about a 10th dimension that would be overarching understanding or adoption of systems. I don't know who here is familiar with a system of systems definition, who could explain today to all of us. Are you familiar with that term? If you put the hands up. One, okay, Professor Jack Chen, I would expect that. So how would you define a system of systems?
Well, I usually hear this one when people talk about like cyber-physical system, etc. So from my understanding, for a system, let's say maybe a building system, then inside building system, then we have different like facade system, the architectural system, structural system, etc. And when we talk about the city, then we also have different system and then different discipline, etc. They have their own dynamics, own elements, and own attributes, and then they interact with each other. Yeah, so
they do, yes. Yeah. So in the ISO, there is an ISO standard glossary for system of systems. There is also the ICE, the ICE system of systems white paper. And the way they define that is basically for example, the distinction that you have a system that is normally composed of subsystems and assemblies and parts, and in one single object or entity. So you can go from the object or entity to a part, to an assembly, to a subsystem in the system, and it works on its own. It does what it does, for example, a car or a computer. And a system of systems is a system that overarch different systems to leverage new functionalities or leverage new benefits, but it does not. That system, it's independent and does not affect necessarily the system it is breaching with other systems. So a system of systems is a collection of systems that can work independently, but you can establish new systems that will bring new value to whatever the enterprise vision might be. And this is interesting when we talk about digital twins, and it's very interesting when we talk about, for example, propositions in the UK to create a national federated digital twin. You know, a collection of digital twins talking to each other, and what sort of system of systems can we create that will bring new value and leverage that data, that information, and create new solutions and applications and so forth. So this is something that could potentially be embedded in BIM processes, in the BIM creation and BIM processes and BIM assets. And it's something that I believe we should investigate, and it could be a BIM dimension. So this is something that we can organize, and here I'm just showing that diagram in a different way. We have dimensions that are universally accepted, we have generally accepted in blue, and we have things that we are proposing, not necessarily in the CBC, but I believe that 11th dimension is something we are proposing. I'm just making a difference here between the 9th and 10th dimension. So one is lean construction, the other one would be construction industrialization. So when we're creating BIM assets, we would be considering digital fabrication, and not only 2D printing, like a 2D laser cutting or cutting or CNC manufacturing and 3D printing, but also 4D fabrication, you know, things that are folded or twisted as they are 3D printed, etc. So one good reference for that is the little B micro robot from Harvard Robot Labs. So as it is manufactured, it also folds itself and assembles. It's a self-assembling. It's basically a self-assembling robot. It's a very clear, it gives a lot of clarity to that 4th dimension manufacturing definition. And when we talk about the CBC project proposals, we should be considering all those different domains, the different disciplines, legal, financing, culture and change, etc. But we also should think about the project as something that will bring a business perspective to the industry. It will bring information capabilities to the industry and academia, and also increase the output of technology capabilities. I'm not quite sure what that project should be, but we definitely want to find out and get started with projects sooner rather than later. So what I would ask you to do is to people at home or people here to scan the QR code, and if you take 5 minutes to answer the survey, they are it's basically